And
So weird.
Fix my hair.
we're recording. All right, so we'll do a quick roll call team. We've got Renee, Chris, Bruce, Gino, and Annie. Renee, Chris, Bruce, Gino, and Annie, and then Emily is on her way. Excused Monica, Marcela, and Mary. Luis. Yes. Beautiful. So how about we start with communications from the co-chairs.
Go ahead, Chris. I'm looking for Dr. Sanchez's email so I can update you all on the contract.
Yeah, so I heard the discussion about the information that we get at public safety, and I'll talk to the to Chief Joy about that, about getting it to us on a monthly basis as well. I think they were still waiting on some of the, is it the March, Bruce? Because with the death of Officer Duran, you had the state police and sheriff covering in the city limits for that week and a half time period. So I think they're waiting for some of the information from them. So as soon as those are updated, I can get them to Valeria, and then she can send them to the rest of the committee. But I'll try to remember to start getting that done on a monthly basis.
Excellent.
Great. So this will be a monthly report, monthly. Beautiful.
It's data specifically on, can you tell us just for Valeria's
As
documentation?
So it's all year to date information, and then changes from last year to this year, but it looks at the major crimes: homicide, robbery, motor vehicle theft, arson, sex offenses, burglary, breaking and entering, larceny, and then assault.
Yeah,
Thank
Give
you.
give some information on dispatch or response times in general, I guess, from start to dispatch, and then just the overall calls for service.
Thank you for that.
Great.
Okay. And you feel complete, Chris? Anything else to that would be good to keep a note on, or?
I did hear from the people from Ithaca late last week, and it sounds like they're still interested in presenting. So I'll try to get them to commit to a specific date.
Beautiful. And just for clarification purposes, you have access to the calendar, right? For the year, we're earmarking dates for presentation so that we don't. Great, beautiful.
Yep.
Thank you for that update. Anything else, Chris, on your end before we circle back to UNM contract update?
I don't think so. We're going through budget hearings now, so that's really consumed most of our time. My time. I'm sure Renee's has a lot of other things on her plate.
I bet.
Lot
Yeah.
going on. Anything you want to say about the budget recommendations that came to us, Chris?
Well, we still have to hear the police and fire budgets, but the mayor's recommending a 16% increase in salaries for police, and then an 8% for fire. Fire is recommending some additional positions be funded, and then some equipment. Those seem to be the big ones. And then some down payment assistance, I think, for public safety specifically, in an attempt to try to get more police and fire to move or to live within the city limits.
And to add to that, Chris and I have been trying to push for everyone to have down payment assistance, not just law enforcement. And the 16% for police and not for other union employees doesn't sit well with me. I think Chris feels the same. Fire actually is 9%, the mayor told me today, because they have they have something written in that they get at 1% at least every year, no matter what. I'd never heard of that before, so maybe you would know that about that, Chris. Yeah, so there's not real, some of us are not aligned with some of the recommendations. I think 16% came because the state recommended it for the state police, because they had a major surplus for the state and the governor recommended that 16%. So they're just taking that and running with it for us too. So we still have to talk about that. We haven't heard their budget. The other thing that they are recommending is funding to have what would be called a substation. Really, I think it's just an office downtown, because there's been a rise in break-ins and vandalism. So, but I think that's everywhere, not just downtown. So I'm not sure. We'll have to hear more about the reasoning for that. So if you're interested, the budget hearings for that, specific to public safety or for the community health and safety department, is on Thursday from 1 to 4, I believe.
Quick question out of curiosity. Has Santa Fe done a salary study recently? That's a big question, but when I moved from City of Santa Fe to Santa Fe Public Schools, Santa Fe Public Schools had just completed a salary study, not only in New Mexico, but with like school districts. And I haven't been following you guys closely enough to know if the city has done a salary study recently.
We did, let's see, I think it's been already 3 years ago, and it was a poorly done study. It's called Class and Comp. So we actually allocated money last year, and they're doing, they're supposedly doing a Class and Comp right now that should help us to kind of equalize it, because the last one started compressing salaries and didn't sit well with certain departments. I mean, it's a long kind of storied situation, but I think as it relates to public safety, yes. And in fact, we've done more for police, and did we did a study that would actually bring them up to a level that other places were. And that was like, what, Chris, 2 years ago or 3 years ago? It was before COVID. And there was because of to equalize it, to make it competitive, we actually gave a 27% increase at that time so that we could level them up and cadets could go in at a higher level. And all of that was really important. It's just now there's this like, we want to see the data to show that helped to recruit. And what Chris was pointing out in one of our meetings is that the number of vacancies we have still is the same, even with all those changes. We have an incentivization. We have an incentivizing of 15,000, y'all, for police to stay for 6 months. And we wanted to know how that was faring, to see if it was helping the cause. And I guess we'll have to bring that up again in the budget hearings, because the number hasn't changed of vacancies. There's been some lateral adjustments or lateral hires. It's just that if we had more data to back up, like a justification, just other than, oh, the state police are doing that.
Right.
I don't know. I think we need more data, but that's Chris and I like fighting for that, and we'll see how that goes.
Thanks for the answer. I just, yeah, the frustrating part for you as counselors and decision makers on budget is, are we taking shots in the dark, or are we making data-driven decisions? So,
Yeah,
Let me
unfortunately,
write that down.
unfortunately with state police raising or giving 16%, other police departments are going to have to follow suit, or officers going to leave to the state police. So it's I've seen it for 10 years. I'm sure you did too, Gino and Annie, where we just keep flooding it with money and nothing changes. Officers just move to whoever's offering the biggest salary at the time, and they don't stay anywhere anymore.
yeah, it becomes an arms race. It's the same thing's happening with teachers, because there aren't enough teachers in the pipeline, so they just offer big money incentives to move from this community to that community, but it fills a vacancy here and creates a vacancy there. It's just
That's a good point.
yeah, shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quote you, Gino, in all of these.
I'll come up with more as the meeting goes on.
The sad thing is that the people that take the brunt of all of this
Mhm.
arms wars that Gina was talking about are the small communities that can't afford to match the 16% increases or the 20% increases. So you end up taking from Espanola and Raton and Taos, who, may have, 10 officers in their entire department, and that's who gets stolen to go to bigger departments.
Right.
And back to your point, Gino and Renee, about data-driven decisions. Something to consider in that data points or indicators is the retention rate and the turnover rate,
Yeah.
because that will be indicative of various factors that can give you a lot of information about what's been done, what's changed, what hasn't. Because throwing money at it it's not always, the only way. There's lots of other ways.
Val, that's an excellent point, because from the data side, everybody looks at vacancies and recruitment, and they forget to look at the retention side.
Mhm.
And I'm in the middle of some union negotiations on behalf of a school district where they're putting a lot of money into recruitment. And the union has said that you should be taking part of that pot of money and putting it into retention.
Exactly.
So what are you able to do to keep the people here instead of chasing those incentives? To use Chris's example, they're chasing incentives. How can you retain people so that they actually grow roots?
Mhm.
And
Absolutely. And I'll add 2 more data points for you to consider, Renee, Chris, and other team members. Oh my gosh, did I just lose it? It's total compensation analysis, so that it's not just the salary that is being seen as compensation, but the total compensation of all the added value, the benefits. So even though the takeaway, the salary, say it's $40,000, in reality, the total compensation is $65,000 because of all the investment that the city puts into benefits. And that can actually start to help shift that perspective around the conversation, the salary conversation, that brings more added value.
Val, you're reminding me of a lot of stuff. When I was city attorney, recruiting attorneys from the state was really simple, because the net pay at the city was higher. Your PERA contributions are so stinking high at 85.15 that if you are making the exact same salary at the state as you are at the city, your net pay will be hundreds of dollars more in the net pay. And so and even when folks were leaving, they were exploring other jobs, and I didn't stop them, but I did ask them to say, figure out what your net pay is going to be. Because if you're leaving the city to go to the state, your net pay is going to be lower. And for my salary range, it was the equivalent of making 15,000 more at the state, when you added up some of the benefits, some of the contributions, some of the recreational aspect that you would pay memberships for, things like that.
Yeah. And on that note, Gino and Renee, because we're talking about data that can be incredibly helpful so that the city can, be really not just strategic, but effective about recruitment and retention, the exiting process. There's a lot of helpful
Yes.
data there. If the exiting process is conducive to gathering that data, has been, designed to gather both qualitative, quantitative data, that then has a feedback loop into the system to say, here are recommendations of what needs to change, whether it's policy, employee relations, employee engagement, benefit, the list goes on. So what are we doing with that data to improve retention? We can get into the weeds about HR, and that's another wheelhouse that I also love working within. So
Good questions, y'all.
Yeah, nice job, Val.
All right,
All
I
right.
documented that. So Chris and I will talk about that on Thursday.
Okay.
And I don't know if Gino, you could later on, since I don't want to take up more time, but if you could explain, I don't know, via email or something, why PER contributions are higher for the city versus state.
It's a decision. Each governmental entity gets to determine what percentage they pay. And once they go to a threshold, they can't back up. I don't remember more detail than that, but I remember we did the research 10 years ago. And so budgetarily, the city sort of backed itself into a corner when they said, we'll take on 85% of the PERA contribution or more. That may not even be an accurate number, but it's such an unbelievable percentage that the city's taken on and can't back away from. And it's significantly higher than what the state pays. Because there's an employee contribution and an employer contribution. And you form it, I think, by resolution. You're digging 10, 12 years back in my brain. But the city at some point chose to be incredibly generous, and that's great. But that's the benefit. Now, that said, I could always argue your net pay will be more if your pay is lower here, but remember your retirement will be lower if you accept lower pay at the city, because it's always based on your bottom line, on your base wages.
And I think it's different for everyone. I think fire has chosen the max PERA contribution by the employer, but I don't think PD's there. I think they take a lesser amount, or the city pays a lesser amount towards PERA for PD than they do for fire. And that was negotiations.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you for that.
Hopefully HR or finance could provide some insights on that.
You think?
Yeah.
And then
I'm
we can
sorry?
get into that wheelhouse too, Gino, because then now I'm thinking labor budgets and forecasting. Anyway, but back to all of you. You're like, Mary had a little, I can't hear anything. Okay, so UNM contract update. If we're done, if we feel complete for now with the budget conversation, and know Chris and Renee, you have a well of knowledge here that if you need additional, brainstorming and resources, obviously Gino's here, so That's your man.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay,
And just a reminder, Ithaca, oh, I don't know if you knew this, Valeria, but on our agenda for today, it said that Ithaca was presenting. It was not taken off, even though you said to stop.
yes. And so when I,
So,
yeah. So we'll continue to work on that.
Yep.
And so do we feel ready to provide a UNM contract update, or did I miss
Yeah.
that? Because I was typing as fast as I could, and maybe I thought, did I miss something here?
no, I think I'll get to that. Let me just let folks know that our policies and practices group, we sent another email to staff. I guess everybody on here knows now that I'm looking at, because I think all of you were copied to that, that we want to have a meeting to get updated on what data they've been able to compile since our request that was sent January 28th. We haven't received anything yet. So we decided to have a meeting after the budget hearings so that they can update us on what has been compiled to date. And then we can ask questions about, like, or just see what's been the holdup for some of the other data points. And I guess I'm just extending the invitation to those of you that aren't part of the working group, if you want to join us, because we did finally select a date and time.
Beautiful. Yeah, if you can let me know what that date and time is, and I'll put it in the action steps follow-up email for tomorrow morning.
So make sure you all have this. What I had from my email, I was just trying to track it down again, May 6th at 1:30. And I'm assuming that'll be Zoom, only because multiple people from different departments we're trying to get them all together, so it'll probably be on Zoom. And that was based on our schedules, and they said they would make that work. So if we could probably share that with the rest of the task force members, see if they want to join us or can join us that day and time. And then the other update was from Dr. Sanchez as it relates to the UNM contract. I asked him for an update last week. He said today that he got word that UNM is almost finished with their review of the contract for this particular project and should be ready to sign no later than early next week. We do not see any issues with the scope of work or budget amount, which is great. And simultaneously, there has to be an internal review board, which is called an IRB. Anytime you're interacting and interviewing individuals, people, you have to get that approved, and that kind of takes a process. And he said that they already started putting that together. The IRB application is going to be submitted so that it can be approved as soon as possible, which is an important step, as you said, to move forward with data collection. So that's where we're at with UNM. That's promising. Good news. Hopefully there won't be an additional level of like review that we have to go through at the city. I'm not sure, but I think we're in a good spot. So probably we're gonna have to start planning to sit down, or I don't know if it's going to be a subcommittee or part of us working with Dr. Sanchez to start formulating our kind of questions and groups that we want to start. I mean, he also has that, obviously, probably we'll start that, but we're probably going to have to provide input and also ways to like certain groups and stakeholders that we want to make sure to reach out to. So I'm just going to put a flag on that because we'll have to do that soon. That's all I have.
Okay.
And also, Renee, we scheduled the Nicole presentation, the National Association of Civilian Oversight, for August 16th.
Oh, wow.
That's we've mentioned it a few times. It's a national, it's called Nicole. And they
Oh, yes.
provide research and training around different civilian oversight models, what works, what doesn't work. They ask for some feedback so they can really kind of target their presentation to us. And they say it's usually about an hour and a half. with half an hour for questions and answers. And I would say kind of a like size, communities compare. But if there's specific suggestions or questions you all have, let me know and they'll tailor their presentation to us.
I'm wondering, Annie, was August their date that they picked? That's a long time from now.
They chose the furthest away that they could have. I think for a reason. I
Really?
gave them all the nearest options that were open and they chose the furthest away. I have a feeling they're quite busy.
Hmm.
It's
Okay.
a hot topic.
We'll
Um,
talk about that, because I also, looking at our timeline, there's some things. It might work out because of the time we'll take to do the community engagement. We'll just have to check that. Make sure it's aligned, because if we're like at a point where we're already making some recommendations, it might not serve us in terms of like our working group goals, but let's talk about that more.
And maybe, if they can't meet during our regular meetings, we can offer some dates just with our working group.
Mhm.
That's true. Actually, that's a good,
That's
okay,
a way
we
to
could
do
talk
it
about it.
sooner.
Let's
In a
talk about that
breakout.
in our breakout. Great, thank you for that.
Which it really almost is in a way. Except for Councilor
know.
Rivera, who's been
We
co-opted
can
into
join
our
our working group.
Please.
But Bruce said he had another meeting. No, what time is your meeting, Bruce? Your other meeting?
4 minutes ago.
Oh, no. Well, if you need to,
Alba will understand.
And
Okay.
Bruce, I can call you in the next couple days if that works for you and kind of get your feedback and thoughts. So they're included.
Yeah, I had just mentioning that I tried contacting Salt Lake City. And they have some telephone numbers on that website. I sent the site, I think, again to Counselor, but it appears names have changed because when I called the number, it wasn't, the recording name wasn't the name on the website. So I left a message anyway, asking about, the process they've had. Is it working for them? Because it looks to be a very easy site to, if you have an issue with how you were treated, to get it to the police department without filling out literally a PDF with a
sounds
pencil.
good.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'll
keep us
let you know.
updated.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
I'll let you know when they contact me back.
Sounds good. You all won't know about that unless you're in our working group, so, but I think all of us will see, except for Chris. Anything else? What else? I know, Gino, you have some stuff for us, but we'll talk about it in our working group breakout.
Yeah, and I just resent it to Valeria. I didn't realize I left you off of that. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so where are we then?
So where are we at now?
We are, if we're done with co-chair updates from the co-chairs. Do we feel complete, Renee and Chris? Awesome. Updates on my end was just that, to confirm the Ithaca presentation. And I know, Chris, you've been keeping in close contact with Renee and I with these updates for when they do. Confirming restorative justice expert panel. I know that Emily and Marcela were working on those dates. And then the fines and fees, Monica and Emily were working on those dates for May 17th and June 21st. So I will ask for that confirmation in our action steps tomorrow, given that they're not here today, unless somebody here has an update around those dates and presentations outside of Ithaca, because I know, Chris, you're working on that. Otherwise, those were the key points that I had to check in with all of you.
At the end, well, we kind of did working group communications too, huh?
Mhm.
Right now.
Yeah.
The
So-
only thing I wanted to add for the group, since Chris isn't in the working group, is that I was able to reach out to the 30 by 30 initiative, which is about women in policing. I did get a response back from them, but it's at the early stages. And the gist of their organization through NYU is getting 30% female representation in policing by 2030. And that they've got a lot of national cities signing up for the initiative. They may not have the funding today, but signing up to a roadmap to get there.
So exciting.
Yeah.
50 by 30 is what it should be.
Yeah,
50
really.
by 2023.
We'd be doing well if we got 3% at the fire department.
Yeah.
Yep, they just had, Chris attended, but they had the new cadets, or sorry, I'm calling it the wrong name. You can tell us, Chris, how many women were inducted in?
None. None out of 16, I think. Actually, 16 brand new cadets and 3 laterals, and none of them were women.
Hmm. Again, out of curiosity, have we started in our new designs of fire stations to include female spaces? Quarters?
Yeah, the fire stations that I was responsible for, Station 3 at Asphalt Park, Station 8, and they all have specific quarters for everybody, and then separate restrooms for male and female.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's great.
The men and women, though, often sleep in the same kind of larger area. Depends on the station. But I think they're getting better at that. But they're getting co-opted by men because there's no women. So the bathrooms get co-opted by men and the
Yeah.
rooms get co-opted by men.
Awkward silence.
Right. What's next?
Yes, I was going to say something about this whole gender specific quarters and bathrooms in relation to, I think my recollection with that study, there was a LGBTQ component, if I remember correctly. And so in thinking about spaces, I'm thinking about a bathroom, a third bathroom, all gender bathroom, that kind of stuff. But yeah.
The first
Hi, Emily.
transgender presentation I did, which has inspired probably a dozen since then in a school context, was at City of Santa Fe for fire department, just to help understand transgender issues. And that was 2012 or 13.
Mm.
Yeah.
What was the class about, Gina?
Just understanding language, pronouns, interaction, need for individual spacing, essentially in the context of trans gender individuals in fire stations, as part of the fire personnel, and how do you adapt? There was there had been a transgender person who came in and spent a few days in a station, and folks just weren't up to speed on how to interact appropriately, and so we helped with that.
Good.
That's good to know, Gino. Maybe you should do another training soon.
I do them for public schools probably 2 to 3 times a year.
I love it.
For public school settings, because students are presenting much earlier now, as early as 1st and 2nd grade.
Hmm.
But also they're presenting in high school, and those bring a whole other set of issues.
Mhm. Thank you. All right, I think we're moving all along here,
Yes.
Valeria.
Thank you, thank you,
Like-
thank you. All right. Lots of great brilliance here and resources. All right, communications from the task force. Anything? Oh, well, Emily, I love your little furry friend there. Such a cute kitty. Do you have any specific updates? Just so that you can have the floor and share with the team anything around communications or updates from your working group, confirmation on presentation dates, so on and so forth.
No, I think Monica sent an email about her presentation dates for fines and fees. I had put in there that our May board meeting to do an initial presentation on alternatives for policing of drugs. And I wanted to talk about some innovative health programs in lieu of criminalization. And then I'm not sure that we can have a full panel of experts on that day. However, so if I could break it up, sort of like has happened in the past, where I do a sort of overview and ground us in some of those models and concepts, and then bring in some experts at a later date. So I think that's about it from our group.
Beautiful. And I have the fines, just for clarification purposes on my end. I have the fines and fees, May 17th and June 21st. Are these more or less the same dates, or is it completely different?
I think in Monica's email, they were going to be later.
Okay.
I can see, let me look up
Monica.
what she may have sent to all of us, but I think they were in July instead.
Okay, I'll just make a note for myself. I don't to look at Monica's email for the July dates. And then the alternative for policing of drugs, and the second one, innovative health programs, what are the dates that I think you already updated in the calendar, right?
That's in the calendar. It's been in there for, I don't know what the second date would be, because we'd have to figure out the experts, but that's one presentation. So the alternatives and the health approaches, it's all one.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that. Anything else, Emily, that would be great too.
I don't think so. Chris, was there anything else from our last meeting?
I don't think so. Seems like forever ago.
Oh, sorry. The other thing I know, the traffic conversation. And so Monica and I were going to work together on that, of alternatives to certain traffic violations. And we hadn't figured out a date for that yet, but I think that'll be more June, July. And we'll put it in the calendar.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Beautiful. Great. So it sounds like, Emily, you feel complete Does this feel like a good time to go into working group breakout sessions? And also, given the configuration of these teams, do we have everybody for both breakout sessions? Yeah? We don't. So how do we want to proceed here? Team.
We have all our our working group folks to break out into, just to kind of talk about some of the things we follow up on that
Okay.
we talked about last time. So I think that's good. I'm just curious before we do that, is what are we deciding for what's going to be on the agenda for May 3rd? If we don't have, so we didn't have Ithaca. I don't know if you knew that, Emily. They were not able to obviously be here today. But I don't know, Chris, would it help to like someone to keep on them, even if it's like Valeria's, just checking with them consistently so that we can see if we have a presentation for May 3rd? Or was Emily's presentation May 3rd? Because I had presentations for alternative responses to drug use. Okay.
Emily, you're on May 3rd.
I had put that on the calendar to do that just sort of initial presentation, so I'm happy to do it that day.
No, I think we stick to what we know is gonna be there, and Ithaca's been a little iffy, so I hate to take away from you when I know you're ready to go.
I'm also happy to do it the following, if you want to reserve that for Ithaca. I'm totally flexible of doing it May 3rd or any of the other dates.
What's our other day, Valeria? May 17th?
Yes. Hold on, let me choose. We have May 3rd, May 17th.
Open?
May 3rd, we have alternatives to policing drug use and possession presentation, and then May 17th is wide open. And it sounds like Emily is flexible to do either or, right? The 3rd or the 17th, depending on if we get confirmation from Ithaca.
Well, I'll try to get commitment from them right away, and if they can't commit to either one, then I think we just move forward and just assume that they really didn't want to do it in the first place.
Okay.
It sounds more like they're having some internal strife and maybe they don't want to publicly air that with a different jurisdiction. I don't know. Is that what the sense you're getting, Chris?
I think there's probably some of that, but I'm not real sure, to tell you the truth. I get kind of different stories, different vibes from them, I guess.
All we want is learn lessons and key findings. Come on, people, don't be greedy. Okay. So, just to confirm with all of you, I've got one working group, Annie, Bruce, Gino, Renee for the policies and practices, and I have Chris and Emily on the alternative approaches. This works? Okay, and it sounds like in this time, I'm sorry about last time, I accidentally shut down the entire thing by saying good night because everybody was saying goodbye. So
Maybe it was better because then we would have kept going.
My apologies.
And he was like, no more. And then it just happened. So it's perfect.
So we'll move into working groups, and I'll spend time with both of you. And just to confirm, next meeting is May 3rd. So that once you're complete with your group, working group, then we'll, complete with the evening. Does that sound good to everybody? Awesome. Okay, I'm getting nods. I am about to open the rooms. We'll see you here shortly, everybody. Thank you. Okay, what happened? I said open the room. Oh, okay, it's going. Okay, we are done. Thank you, everybody.